There are habits that don't wrinkle your skin, but they wrinkle your soul. They're quiet choices, daily gestures that seem harmless, but over time drain your energy, your clarity, even years off your life. You won't see them in medical checkups or reflected in the mirror, but they're there, quietly accelerating a kind of wear and tear you could avoid. The hardest part is that many of these mistakes are disguised as virtues. Patience that's really resignation, silence rooted in fear, help that masks dependence. And the more you repeat them, the more you disconnect from yourself, until one day you realize you didn't age with dignity, you slowly faded away without even noticing. Today I want to show you 11 mistakes that, if you don't catch them in time, will make you age twice as fast. These aren't theories, they're real things you and I see every single day. But if you stay with me until the end, the final lesson might completely change how you see this stage of your life. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Stay with me. This video could be the beginning of your rebirth. Have you ever felt like you're withering away while still alive? Stuck in the same place, with the same people, repeating the same patterns that no longer nourish you? How many times have you held on to a relationship, a routine, or even a belief, not because it's good for you, but because you're afraid to let go? This isn't an accusation. It's an invitation to take an honest look. Because the first silent mistake that speeds up your aging is this: refusing to let go of what's already draining you. At this stage in life, many things have already run their course. Some people have shown you everything they had to give and everything they could take away. Some habits no longer make sense. Some beliefs, even the ones that once saved you, are now holding you back. And yet we hold on, as if letting go were a betrayal, as if saying, "This no longer serves me," were an act of ingratitude instead of a declaration of self-love. I once met a woman who had spent decades tending to a garden that never bloomed. Every morning, she watered it, cleaned it, shielded it from the sun, the wind, the bugs. But the plants kept drying out, again and again. "It's the soil," she'd say. "I don't have enough time," she'd repeat. "Maybe I'm just not cut out for this," she'd murmur. But she never stopped trying, until one day someone asked her, "What if it's not your fault? What if that garden simply isn't fertile anymore?" That question shook her, because it wasn't just a garden. It was a life invested in something that no longer bore fruit. It was the guilt of giving up, the fear of starting over, the grief of realizing that some things, no matter how much you love them, can no longer grow with you. That's how many of us live, with relationships that dim our light, routines that drain us, and thoughts that slowly poison us. We say it's always been this way, as if habit justified sadness. We say it's too late to change, as if aging were a sentence instead of a chance to be reborn. But Stoicism teaches us something different. Epictetus said, "We're not bound by things, but by the opinions we hold about them." And among those opinions, the most dangerous one is believing we have no choice. You do have a choice. You always have. The problem is, choosing means letting go. And letting go hurts, but holding on to what drains you hurts even more. Aging isn't just a physical process, it's an emotional one too. And when you carry what no longer belongs to you, what no longer serves you, that weight turns into exhaustion, apathy, discouragement. It steals the spark from your eyes, the sharpness of your mind, the meaning in your days. Take a moment to reflect on this. What are you still holding on to, just out of habit? Who are you still caring for, listening to, justifying, despite not being seen, not being valued, not receiving anything in return? What belief about yourself are you still repeating, even though it no longer helps you move forward? What routine are you still following, even though it's become a prison? The first step to reclaiming your vitality isn't taking vitamins or hitting the gym. It's letting go the anger that no longer heals, letting go of the connection that no longer adds to your life, letting go of the fear of being alone. Because believe me, it's worse to be surrounded by what's consuming you. God didn't bring you this far to keep you trapped in old stories. He brought you here to wake up. And sometimes, awakening begins with one decision: to stop investing energy in what has already withered. This is just the beginning. And if this first truth stirred something in you, stay with me. Because each of the mistakes we'll explore has the power to show you where you're losing life without realizing it. And in the end, when we reach the last one, you might discover that it was never too late to start blooming. Letting go of what's draining you is an act of dignity, but it's also an act of energy. And when that energy starts to return to you, it reveals something that's often been neglected for years: the body. Not as an object to be fixed or a burden to be dragged around, but as an ally that has patiently waited for you to look at it with respect. That's why we've reached the second key point in this video: postponing the care of your body as if it were eternal. The body doesn't wait. It puts up with everything for a long time, until one day it stops whispering and starts screaming through aches, fatigue, and signs you can no longer ignore. But the hardest part isn't the fragility that comes with age. The hardest part is realizing that often we arrive at that fragility by choice, because we kept putting it off, because we thought taking care of ourselves was vanity. Or worse, pointless. The root of this problem isn't just neglect. It lies in how many of us have been taught to put ourselves last. For decades, countless women have spent their lives caring for other people's bodies: children, partners, the sick, the home. And when they finally get a moment for themselves, their own body no longer responds like it used to. That's when the phrase sets in, like a verdict. What's the point? It's too late. But it's not. Too late is when you stop trying. Until then, you still have the power to choose again. From a Stoic perspective, taking care of the body isn't an act of ego, it's a responsibility to the life we've been entrusted with. Epictetus said, "Do not abuse what is not entirely yours." And paradoxically, your body isn't entirely yours. It's a loan you're meant to honor. It's the vessel that houses your spirit, the tool through which you engage with the world. And when you neglect it, you don't just lose physical strength. You lose independence, clarity, joy. Many older women reach this stage feeling disconnected from their bodies. They see them as heavy, limited, worn down by time, but also distant, as if their body no longer belongs to them. And it shows in the little things, in the tired way they rise from bed, in the reluctance to look in the mirror, in the lack of motivation to go for a walk or prepare something nourishing. But what shows most, and rarely gets said, is the feeling of being trapped in a body that no longer feels like home, but like a prison. And yet, one thing hasn't been lost: the ability to reconnect. It doesn't take a radical transformation. What it takes is a deep shift in how you see your body. Start treating it like a loved one who's been waiting too long. Speak to it kindly, feed it with gratitude, move it with respect, not punishment, not to meet someone else's standards, but to reclaim presence, the emotional agility that comes with every step taken with intention. Spirituality plays a vital role here too. God didn't give you this body for you to abandon it at the finish line. He gave it to you as a vessel to live with dignity until your very last day. And dignity isn't about how you look. It's about how you inhabit yourself. Your body speaks to you every day. The question is, are you listening? Are you showing up for it? Or are you turning away? Are you giving thanks or punishing it through neglect? Because when you push it aside, you're also pushing aside your joy, your mental clarity, your vital strength. Neglecting your body is like telling life, I no longer care to stand tall. And you didn't make it this far just to give up. You made it here to reconnect with your source, and that source begins within you, in your flesh, in your breath, in your steps. But this isn't the end. There's another mistake, one even deeper, often mistaken for kindness or responsibility, but in truth, it's slowly consuming us. And it's time to face it with full honesty. Let's keep going. You've seen it already. When you let go of what drains you and begin to inhabit your body with dignity, something within you starts to awaken. But that awakening can be fragile if you don't protect it from a silent enemy that's been with you for years. We've reached the third point in this video, and this is where everything can start to shift. If you're willing to face this truth, staying silent about your pain just to avoid making others uncomfortable. It's a common practice, almost automatic, one that many older women have normalized over time. They stay quiet because they think it's not worth arguing. They stay quiet to avoid worrying their children, to avoid seeming weak, to maintain the image of strength they've built. But that silence, far from being wise, is a poison that ages you from within. The mind fills with unspoken words, repressed frustrations, and buried emotions disguised as guilt. And what isn't expressed turns into tension, into invisible illnesses, into sleepless nights that repeat without explanation. The root of this issue runs deep. We were taught that speaking about our feelings is a sign of weakness, that showing pain means exposing ourselves to being ignored or worse, judged. But true Stoic philosophy isn't an invitation to submissive silence. It's a call to conscious mastery. It's not about shouting, but about speaking clearly. It's not about demanding, but about firmly stating what hurts and what you will no longer allow. The strategy I want to share with you is simple yet powerful. Every time something hurts, don't suppress it right away. Breathe, observe it, and ask yourself, does this need to be said or simply understood by me? If the answer is that it deserves to be spoken, do so with calm resolve. Write a letter, leave a message, speak face to face, but stop holding in what's breaking you from the inside. Because the soul wrinkles too when you force it into silence. Think of it like a vase filled with dirty water over the years. Every word you didn't say, every mistreatment you overlooked, every gesture you ignored to avoid conflict, it's all another drop. And one day, that vase spills over. Not with words, but with symptoms. Fatigue, sadness, disconnection, a deep sense of emptiness. Don't let it get to that point. The clarity that comes with this stage of life also means knowing which battles to fight, and one of the most noble is reclaiming your voice. From a spiritual perspective, speaking your truth isn't about harming, it's about healing. God doesn't want your silence in the face of injustice. He wants your awakening, because when you speak, even through fear, you're telling the world, I'm still here, and what I feel matters. If this video is resonating with you, if it's putting into words things you hadn't yet named, I invite you to subscribe and give it a like. It helps me continue creating content that doesn't aim to entertain, but to shake you awake. Let me know in the comments what country you're watching from, and write an affirmation to sum up this point. I choose to speak with clarity. I'd love to hear from you and feel this garden grow with voices that refuse to be silenced. There are still more mistakes to uncover, each more revealing than the last. And that final lesson might be the turning point between living resigned or being reborn with purpose. Let's keep going. Reclaiming your voice is one of the most powerful things you can do for yourself, but it's not enough to speak if you're speaking to people who don't hear you. And this is where the next big obstacle hides. We've reached the fourth point in this video, and this mistake has a name: pouring your energy into people who don't see you. It's one of the saddest and most common traps in adult life. because it starts with love, with devotion, with that natural willingness so many women have to care, support, and hold things together. But over time, that love turns into routine. And if that routine isn't mutual, it becomes exhaustion disguised as virtue. The most dangerous part of this trap is how quietly it creeps in. You don't wake up one day saying, "I'm going to give myself to someone who doesn't value me." No. It starts with small gestures. A son who only calls when he needs something, a friend who shows up only when there's a problem, a partner who no longer sees you but still expects you to fulfill your role. And you do it because you know how to love, because you don't want to seem resentful, because you were told that love endures all things, but that all comes with a cost. And too often that cost is your own light. Stoicism doesn't teach us to stop loving, it teaches us to love with clarity. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, what doesn't add, subtracts. Not out of judgment, but out of the awareness that your time is limited and your energy sacred. When you invest your vitality in relationships where you're not seen, you don't just get tired, you shrink. You get used to being functional, helpful, available, but invisible. And over time, that invisibility leaves a mark. You stop dreaming. You stop deciding. You stop talking about yourself. You simply exist for others like a kind shadow no one takes the time to notice. This trap also has a spiritual layer that makes it even deeper. Many older women believe this is how it should be, that it's their duty to be there for everyone, even if it means forgetting themselves, that God expects sacrifice, even when that sacrifice erases their joy. But the truth is something else. Real love, the kind that heals, builds, and honors life, does not ask you to disappear. God doesn't want your surrender. He wants your presence, your clarity, your dignity lit from within. And if you're wondering how to break free from this trap, the answer isn't to stop loving. It's to learn to choose who you give your love to. Pay attention to who really listens, who genuinely cares how you are, who gives you space without expecting something in return. You don't have to cut everyone off, but you can set boundaries. And that starts with you, deciding that your energy is not up for grabs, that you're done watering deserts. Because there are people who deserve your time, your affection, your attention, and there are others who are only around because they got used to you always being there. There is nothing selfish about protecting your peace. In fact, it's the most generous thing you can do for yourself and for everyone around you. Because when you reclaim your center, your presence becomes more genuine, more radiant. And from there, yes, you can care, help, love, but never again at the cost of yourself. This isn't about cutting ties blindly. It's about putting people in their rightful place, especially those who never saw yours. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, let them be uncomfortable. You didn't come into this world to be a spectator. Now that you know this, look at your relationships with new eyes. And ask yourself, who sees me? Who honors me? Who drains me? Because life keeps moving, and every day you give without awareness is a day you won't get back. Let's keep going. Getting this far is already an act of courage. You've carried too much for too long. And when you finally start to let go, to prioritize your body, and to set boundaries in your relationships, another silent force rises up to stop you. The mind that won't forgive the past or trust the present. We're now at the 5th point of this video, and its name is clear: idealizing the past and distrusting the present. This trap isn't just nostalgic, it's corrosive, because it turns memories into chains and the present into an enemy you just have to endure. And that way of thinking ages you more than time itself. I've often spoken with women who say with pain in their voices, things used to be different. Back then, there was joy, there was companionship, there was meaning. And they're not wrong. There were surely moments in the past that felt more alive, more purposeful. But there was also pain. There was loss. There were struggles no one else saw. The problem isn't remembering. The problem is being tied to those memories as if they're the only time you ever truly lived. As if what you're living now holds no value at all. That's where the real weariness begins, looking back with melancholy and forward with fear, as if the present didn't even deserve your attention. Stoicism warns us about this illusion. Marcus Aurelius said the only time that truly belongs to us is the time we're living right now, and yet we give it away without realizing it. We let it slip through our fingers every time we say, "I'm not who I used to be. I can't anymore. It's not worth it." That story wears you down. It pushes you into resignation, autopilot, an empty routine. And the worst part is, it convinces you that you can't build anything new, that all that's left is to watch life slowly fade away. But no, that's the trap, and you can break free from it, not with magic formulas or pretty phrases, but with a deep decision to stop seeing the present as a threat and start seeing it as a new kind of opportunity. No, it won't be like it was. That's true, but that doesn't mean it will be worse. It's a new stage, with new rhythms, new possibilities, new ways to be present. To break this pattern, you need a mindset that honors the past, but doesn't idolize it. A way of seeing that says, yes, there was beauty and there was pain, but what I have now deserves my attention. And what's coming deserves my intention. It's not easy. The past offers comfort. It's familiar. It allows us to cry with nostalgia and avoid the risks of the now. But living there robs you of your one true power, the power to choose who you are today. Every time you distrust the present, you weaken your autonomy. Every time you say, "It's not like it used to be," you chip away at your dignity. Because what makes this stage of life valuable isn't that it resembles your youth, it's that it's entirely yours. You can build new relationships, revive nourishing routines, find meaning in simple things, but only if you're willing to face forward and stop living with your back to your own life. This change doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with one question. What in my life today could I be grateful for if I dared to see it without judgment? Maybe it's the calm of your mornings, the quiet you can now enjoy, the freedom of not answering to anyone but yourself. That's where reconnection begins. Not in what's missing, but in what's already here. In what, if you choose to inhabit it, can bring you more peace than any idealized memory. You are not your past. You are what you choose to do with what remains. And if that still doesn't feel like enough, wait for the next point. Because what comes next might touch a wound you've been hiding for years. And it's time to name it. Let's keep going. You've seen it now. Idealizing what once was and distrusting what is keeps you trapped in a kind of emotional limbo. And while you linger there, longing for what won't return and fearing what might come, something deeper starts to eat away at you. Something that's not obvious at first, but slowly corrodes like silent moisture seeping into the walls. We've reached the 6th point of this video, and it's this: being ashamed of your own desires. It sounds harsh, I know, but I want you to face it head on. How many times have you denied yourself something you truly wanted just because you thought it wasn't appropriate for someone your age? How many times have you said no to a craving, a dream, a small joy, because you were afraid of seeming ridiculous, dramatic, or selfish? Picture it. You're a woman who spent decades giving everything, your energy, your body, your time. You've raised others, worked, held it all together. And now, when you could finally choose something for yourself, when you could freely ask what moves you, excites you, brings you pleasure, you hold back. You tell yourself not anymore, that it's not worth it, that those things are for others, for younger women, for those who still have something left to live for. But you do too. You have something left to live for until your very last breath. And yet, you've let this idea take root, that to want something is improper, inconvenient, even dangerous. It settles in your mind like a sentence. This trap is cruel because it disguises itself as humility. You say you don't need much, that you're fine like this, that as long as everyone else is okay, I'm okay too. But it's not true, because deep down, something in you is still stirring. A curiosity, a need to create, to feel, to discover, and when you ignore it, it turns into frustration, into resentment disguised as acceptance, into a dimmed life stuck on repeat. It's like a candle burning inside a glass jar with no air. The flame is still there, but it's fading. Denying your desires doesn't make you wiser or stronger or more dignified. It makes you more disconnected from yourself. Stoicism doesn't mean giving up what brings meaning. It means discerning between what enslaves and what ignites. And you know perfectly well when a desire comes from your soul and when it comes from emptiness. Soulful desires aren't whims. They're reminders that you're still alive, and if you ignore them, life becomes just another chore. You wake up, do the usual, go through the motions, and fall asleep with that nagging feeling that something's missing, but you no longer know what. What's missing is you. You, with your urge to learn something new. You, with your longing to feel seen, desired, useful, not just for others, but for yourself. You, with your unanswered questions, your postponed dreams, the deepest parts of you waiting to be named. And if you don't do something about that, what comes next is just more of the same. Cold relationships, repetitive days, a soulless aging. I'm not telling you to run out and change everything. I'm telling you to stop telling yourself you can't. Because as long as you're ashamed of wanting, you're aging twice as fast. You're letting life slip through your fingers while pretending everything's fine. And it's not. What's happening is this: you're still here. You can still move. You can still love. You can still choose what to do with this body, this mind, this day you've been given. So look at yourself with honesty. And if there's something you want, something you deeply long for, don't deny it. Maybe you can't have everything, but you can have something. You can do something. You can say something. Because if the desire is still there, it means something in you refuses to die out. And that, more than anything else, deserves your respect. Let's keep going. What comes next may reveal the most common and most dangerous mistake of all. The one that wears the mask of caution, but quietly steals your freedom. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you no longer wants to keep saying no to yourself. You've already seen that desire isn't a weakness, it's a sign of life. And yet, there's a deeper mistake that runs underneath all the others. One that quietly slips into your daily routine, disguised as normal, and without you noticing, speeds up your mental and emotional wear like few other things can. We're now at the 7th point of this video, and the mistake is this: believing your mind no longer needs stimulation. It's a dangerous trap because it doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in over time. When the days start to blur together, when your thinking gets sluggish, when you start saying you can't understand anything new because that's for younger people. But the truth is this: your mind doesn't age because of the years. It ages from neglect. Your mind needs movement, challenge, novelty. It needs air, questions, wonder. When you stop reading, stop learning, stop questioning, you're telling your life it's already over, and it's not. It doesn't matter if you're 60, 70, or 80. As long as you're breathing, your mind is still fertile ground. What dries it up isn't age. It's the habit of repeating without thinking, seeing without reflecting, acting without questioning. And in many cases, that's not an innocent mistake, it's a convenient decision. Because thinking hurts. Learning, demands effort. Questioning shakes foundations that have been there for decades. But if you don't do it, if you don't stir your thoughts from time to time, you become a repeater of borrowed phrases, a spectator of your own decline. There's a Stoic phrase that sums it all up: the soul withers when it stops growing. And the soul doesn't grow in passivity. It grows when you read something that unsettles you, when you dare to write down your ideas, when you expose yourself to new knowledge, even if you don't fully understand it. You don't need to enroll in a university or study formal philosophy. All it takes is a notebook, a deep conversation, the decision to ask questions instead of repeating what you've always said. Because if you keep doing what you do every day, your mind won't stop, but it will start to rust. And while you won't see it in the mirror, you'll feel it. You'll feel it in the lack of drive, in the absence of excitement, in that numb sense that nothing surprises you anymore. It's not that the world has gone dim, it's that you stopped lighting yourself up. Be brutally honest with yourself. Ask whether what you're doing with your mind each day is renewing it or slowly killing it. Because the responsibility is yours. No one can think for you. No one can pull you out of stagnation if you don't decide to move. And there are no excuses. It's not about resources or time or outside help. It's an intimate decision. Waking up and choosing to read 3 pages, to write down one idea, to ask one question instead of pretending you already know. Not because you have to, but because you deserve to, because you're still alive. And living without stimulation is letting yourself fade away quietly. This isn't about becoming who you were before. It's about becoming yourself again. An active mind is a mind that chooses, that doesn't accept what it doesn't understand, that keeps moving, even when it's hard, because it knows stagnation is the real death. And you weren't put on this earth to repeat empty days. You came to discover right up to the end all you're still capable of becoming. Let's keep going. What's next may open your eyes like nothing else before. Pay close attention. If you've made it this far, you already know that keeping your mind active isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. A mind that stops, a curiosity that fades, is a life that starts repeating itself without soul. But even with that awakening, there's something else that can sabotage all your progress. And it does so in the name of peace, of love, of so-called maturity. We're now at the 8th point in this video, and it's time to say it plainly: avoiding conflict to preserve peace. That habit, that automatic reaction that seems noble, is stealing your life. Because what you're getting isn't peace, it's submission. It's not harmony, it's forced silence. It's not wisdom, it's fear dressed up as prudence. And every time you choose to stay quiet to avoid discomfort, give in to avoid tension, or accept injustice to keep the waters calm, you're giving up authority over your own existence. You're trading your self-respect for a false sense of calm that sooner or later turns into resentment. This isn't about fighting with everyone. It's about learning to stand your ground when it matters, about saying no with confidence, about holding firm to your truth even when your voice shakes. Because if you don't, what you're protecting isn't peace. It's someone else's comfort. And that comfort is built on your silence. It's easy to fall into the trap of avoiding conflict. We do it out of exhaustion, fear of losing relationships, the illusion that giving in will keep everything from falling apart. But what doesn't break on the outside often cracks inside, and you know that. You've felt it in your stomach, in your throat, in those sleepless nights when you asked yourself, "Why didn't I say anything?" The answer is simple: because you didn't feel like you had the right. Because you were taught that silence was more dignified than confrontation. But that no longer applies. Not at this age. Not after everything you've lived through. Here's a simple, concrete action you can take today. Pick one situation where you've been giving in too much and break the pattern. Say what you think. Not with yelling, but with truth. Not with anger, but with clarity. Do it with simple words, but with conviction. This doesn't feel right to me. I don't agree. I'm not going to keep doing this. That choice may seem small, but it's a break from years of silence. And that takes a new mindset, understanding that fair conflict doesn't destroy, it builds. That making others uncomfortable is sometimes the first step to finally being seen. That keeping a false peace is the highest price you can pay for holding on to hollow relationships. Because respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you claim. And no one will give it to you if you don't demand it first. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't keep saying, "Now's not the time." Because every time you postpone your truth, someone else fills that space with their rules, their rhythm, their comfort. And there you are, living in an emotional house you didn't build, obeying rules you didn't choose, paying with your energy for a peace that doesn't even soothe you. Today, you can choose differently. Today, you can start speaking with strength, standing in what you feel, facing what makes you uncomfortable. And yes, maybe you'll lose something. But losing what doesn't respect you is never a real loss. It's a liberation. Let's keep going. What's next might challenge you even more. But it might also give you back something you thought was gone for good. Pay attention. Just conflict hurts, but it also cleanses. And when you finally set a boundary, speak with conviction, and stand in your truth, another shadow appears. One that's even heavier. That inner voice telling you it's better to go back, that you're too tired, that it's not worth fighting anymore at this stage in life. That voice isn't your conscience, it's your fear. We've reached the 9th point in this video, and it needs to be named without sugarcoating, giving up your independence in exchange for comfort. It's one of the most destructive mistakes, and yet one of the most socially accepted because no one questions it. On the contrary, people applaud it. Take it easy. You've done enough. Let others take care of you now. But what no one tells you is the cost of that so-called comfort. Because when you give up your independence, you also give up your voice, your choices, your authority over yourself. And with time, that erases you. The excuses used to justify this surrender sound kind, almost noble. My kids asked me to. I don't have the energy I used to. I don't want to be a bother. But none of those statements are entirely true. They're ways of softening a harsher reality that you no longer feel capable, that you've been made to believe you need permission to move, to decide, to make others uncomfortable. And that's when real aging begins. Not when the body changes, but when you let others define you, when you wait for someone to tell you what you can and cannot do. When your life starts revolving around other people's needs, as if you no longer had the right to your own. The illusion of comfort is dangerous because it numbs you. It settles you into a lukewarm routine that seems peaceful, but is really a cage with soft walls, but firm bars. You stop doing what you want because you no longer control your finances, because you depend on someone to drive you, because everything has to align with other people's schedules. And you get used to it, to being told when and how, to being consulted only out of courtesy, to being available but invisible. And in that habit you lose power, first physical, then emotional, and finally spiritual. Stoicism doesn't talk about comfort. It talks about inner strength, self-mastery, and living with intention. And that doesn't happen by surrendering your independence as if it were a luxury you can no longer afford. It happens by reclaiming every small decision that brings you back to yourself. Maybe you can't do everything on your own, but you can still decide how you want to live. You can organize your time. You can set conditions. You can demand respect without shouting. But none of that will happen if you keep telling yourself, this is just how it is now. Because that's not humility, It's abandonment disguised as maturity. You have the right to be inconvenient. You have the right to shape your day around your own rhythm. You have the right to say you're not going, you're not doing, you don't agree, because your life is still yours. And every time you hand it over out of fear or for comfort, you're denying yourself the chance to build a dignified old age. Don't wait for someone to give your independence back. You have to take it. And that begins with one simple but revolutionary act. Accepting that, even if you receive help, even if you're not alone, you are the one who must decide how you want to be alive. What comes next may be the most ordinary gesture of all, and yet the most forgotten. Because if you don't name it, your soul will keep waiting. Let's keep going. Now you know what reclaiming your independence really means. It's not symbolic, it's a daily act of taking yourself back. But this is where many people stumble. Not because they can't move forward, but because once they take those first steps, they feel the discomfort of real change. They catch a glimpse of their new freedom, then pull back, scared by the sound of their own voice. It's more common than you think. And that brings us to the 10th point in this video, giving up on new experiences for fear of looking ridiculous. This is one of the saddest traps, because it doesn't come from inability. It comes from the weight of other people's eyes, from that silent judgment that whispers, "At your age, that's not appropriate, you'll look desperate, you're going to make a fool of yourself." So you stop. You self-sabotage. You convince yourself it's better to stay where you are, even if there's no life left there. This fear is an invisible cage. It has no solid argument, but it rules everything. How many times have you thought about starting something, a class, a walk, a short trip, a change in your look, and shut it down before even trying, just because you imagined what others might say? What will they think? What if I fail? What if they laugh? Those questions pull you away from yourself, because what's at stake isn't an activity, it's your permission to stay alive. And being alive, by definition, means being exposed, to failing, to laughing, to starting over. If you give up on trying new things for fear of looking foolish, you're silently accepting that aging means becoming static. And it doesn't. Aging can be another kind of intensity if you let it. Why do so many people retreat after trying to change? Because change doesn't reward you right away. At first, it's uncomfortable. It breaks routines. It leaves you alone with your choices. And in that solitude, the ghosts come back. The voices from the past, the criticism, the memories of when you tried and it didn't work. But that discomfort isn't a mistake. It's the price of real transformation. The strategy to hold on to this change long-term is simple, but demanding. Turn movement into a habit, and the habit into a daily affirmation. Don't ask if you feel like it. Don't wait for someone else to approve it. Don't measure success by applause. Do it because it's your choice. Because every step you take toward yourself, whether anyone notices or not, is worth more than 1,000 acts of conformity. The key is silent consistency. One step a day, one affirmation a week, one small risk at a time, not for others, but for you. Because you know what things you stopped doing out of fear of seeming out of place. You know which part of you is still waiting for a chance to feel truly alive. And if you don't take that chance today, it'll be harder tomorrow. Because the body gets used to not moving, the mind dulls, and the soul resigns. But you're not here to resign. You're here to break the idea that age limits you. What limits you is the fear of being laughed at. But you know what's more ridiculous? Living the final part of your life like it's a punishment. Do it, learn, try, fall and get back up. Look at the world again with the eyes of a beginner. Because every time you dare to do something new, you're not playing with time, you're taking it back. What comes next might completely change how you understand this stage of life. It's the deepest point of all, and you need to hear it. Because after this, there'll be no more excuses. Let's keep going. Up until now, we've talked about movement, decisions, and breaking patterns. But none of that means anything if your mind still sees this stage of life as an ending, as a countdown to the finish line. Because even if you change things on the outside, if deep down you still believe your time has passed, everything will fall right back into place. That's why we've reached the 11th and perhaps most defining point of this video, treating aging as an ending instead of a threshold. This is the most subtle and most destructive mistake of all, because it doesn't show up in a single gesture. It shows up in how you move through the world, in how you walk, in how you speak, in how you choose or don't choose what to do with your days. It shows up when you present yourself as someone waiting for the end, someone who no longer expects anything, but doesn't do anything either, someone watching life from the sidelines as if they no longer belong in it. That mindset doesn't come out of nowhere. It's the result of years of hearing that after a certain age, you no longer start new things, no longer change, no longer desire. It's what we've been taught, that the body has an expiration date, that desire fades, that adult life is lived for others, and old age is lived in silence. But that's not true. Aging isn't the end. It's the threshold between the story you were told and the story you can write, if you dare. Because everything you've done up to now, good, bad, unfinished, it's already behind you. All you have is this stretch of time. And this stretch can be the most authentic one of all, but it won't be if you're still waiting for something outside of you to give it meaning. It won't be if you keep repeating, "I don't have time," while you let your days slip by watching life pass from the couch. The most damaging belief in this stage of life is thinking that what you didn't achieve in your 30s is no longer possible, that what you didn't fully live before, you never will. But that's an emotional trap. Because the present isn't built from past lack, it's built from the decision to stop feeding that story. And do you know what truth stings the most? That many times we convince ourselves there are no more options, just to avoid the risk. Because if you admit that you still can, then you also have to admit that you're choosing not to. And that truth, though uncomfortable, gives you your power back. There are phrases you simply cannot keep repeating. I'm no longer useful. I have nothing left to give. There's no reason anymore. Every time you say them, you're signing your own surrender. And you weren't made to surrender. You were made to transform, even if it hurts, even if it demands you face your fears head on. Because there is something worse than dying, living as if you're already gone. That's what truly accelerates aging, not the physical, the mental, the spiritual. When you decide the road is over, all that happens is you stop before your time. But life, real life, doesn't end until your final breath. As long as you can breathe, you can choose. And as long as you can choose, you can begin. So look at yourself, today, with everything you still lack, with everything you no longer are, but also with everything you still can be. The question isn't how much time you have left. The question is, what will you do with what you have? Because if you choose to treat this stage as a threshold, not a closing, but an opening, then it will have been worth making it this far. Not because of what's behind you, but because of what you still have left to build. The moment to wake up is now. Not when someone else tells you, not when you have guarantees. Now. You decide. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. You're here because something inside you is done living out of habit, out of fear, or out of silence. What you just heard isn't a list of friendly tips or feel-good phrases. These are uncomfortable truths, truths most people don't dare to face. But you did. And that speaks to a strength you may have forgotten, but that's still there, waiting to be used. Each of these 11 mistakes carries a real cost. They steal your years. They drain your energy. They strip you of presence. And the most dangerous part is that many of them repeat themselves without you noticing, disguised as the natural process of aging. But now you know they're not. Aging isn't what dims your light. What dims your light is continuing to live as if it's already gone out. The moment to choose is now. Not tomorrow, not when everything's easier, not when someone else gives you permission. Today, because what you don't change today will weigh twice as much tomorrow. The women who made it to the end of this video are different. They're not looking for comfort. They're looking for direction. They're not after emotional anesthesia. They want truth, even if it hurts. And if that's you, if you felt this content spoke to you clearly, leave a comment with the phrase, "I choose to live awake," and tell me what country you're listening from. Don't do it for me, do it for yourself, so that every time you read it, you remember the moment you decided to stop being a spectator in your own life. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This channel doesn't exist to entertain, it exists to wake you up, to walk with you with strength and respect, and to say what no one else dares to say without sugarcoating. Here, you won't find empty formulas or surface-level optimism. You'll find real tools to rebuild yourself from philosophy, from awareness, from a deep spirituality that doesn't need a name to have power. If this content spoke to you directly, subscribe and be part of this community, a community of women who have chosen to wake up, who refuse to settle, who reject the idea that aging should be a surrender disguised as peace. And if you know someone who needs to hear these words, share them. Because sometimes a video like this can be the first step toward finally stopping the habit of dimming your own light just to keep others comfortable. This doesn't end here. There's so much more to say, so much more to discover together. Stay with us and choose one of the 2 videos on screen. Anyone, just don't stop. Because every step you take now is a step back to yourself. And that, more than anything else, is what truly matters.